Hey guys, I am jumping on to make a really quick video. I was just thinking about, because I'm really trying hard to find a way to explain the problem that God has to solve. And I'm going to keep using Lord of the Rings. You know, in that scene, Frodo gets stabbed with the Morgul blade, and Aragorn says he's going to turn into a wraith now. So that's the fall, right? Like somehow the eating the fruit, you partake of it, your body starts to change, you start to become a ring wraith, you start to spiritually die. When Frodo is in that state and he's starting to turn into a wraith, in the movie, they depict it as, they show Arwen, who's an elf, and she shows up, and her true nature is she shines with tremendous light, right? Like in the real world, in the fallen, not the real world, but in actually, because it's less of a real world, and that's what the way you need to think of it, is mortality is less real than celestial stuff. Like it's less real because it's less full of light and truth and substance. It's like it's more corrupt, and it means it's closer to death, which is non-existence. So it's less real. We need to change the way we think of it opposite, where like supernatural is like less real and natural is more real. It's really the other way around. Supernatural is more real, and the natural man is less real because it's closer to death, to non-existence. And so anyway, Frodo is in this state, and Arwen shows up, and he can see her because he's entering into that realm. He can see her in her true form, and as an elf, she's full of light. If you remember, it shines. She's just shining. Now, like everyone else, Aragorn and the other hobbits, that's not what they see. They just see her outer form that looks like a more like a human. But Frodo sees her true form, and he kind of like winces at it, right? He can't handle it. And then similarly later in the third movie, Return of the King, when the ring wraiths are now on those like dragon type things flying around, and they're flying to try to get Faramir and the knights, the other Gondor warriors who are riding back to the city, and Gandalf rides out to meet them, and he shines his light from his staff, and it hits the ring wraiths, and they like fly away because they can't handle the light. That's what I'm talking about. Like they can't. When you start to become that fallen thing, you can't handle the light. You wince at it, you turn away, you flee away, and it's because darkness can't abide the light, right? And so that's the problem. And so what you have to do is like basically like you have to have I'll go back to Arwen. Arwen is like hidden inside of her is this glorious elf being, but on the outside she looks like everyone else. And when you're around elves in the Lord of the Rings, you can kind of sense there's something special about them, even though they look kind of like everyone else. That's the incarnation. That's Jesus Christ hidden in his body. That's the concept. You and I are also incarnated in a sense. There's something deep inside of us that's special, but it's more buried, it's more hidden, and Christ was more tangible. And he was able, because of that nature, he's able to like smuggle in like heaven into mortality through his body, through the veil, through his body, which is the veil, and just enough comes out of him to make our lives, to bless us. And now here's the thing, this is what I keep talking about. You have to believe in some kind of like, Jesus lived in one time, in one place. And so if he had to, if the way this gets solved is he has to come into contact with you, so that you can feel his presence shining on you. If that's the only way as a mortal being we're going to feel his presence, which is what I'm proposing, because otherwise it's too much, we'll shrink away like a ring wraith from Arwen or from Gandalf's staff, then he has to come in contact with each of us in his mortal form. Okay? And that is why the atonement had to be a vicarious suffering for all of us, because he's coming into contact with each of us in our mortal form. That's what's so crazy about it. It becomes like this crazy sci-fi thing, but it's possible because all things are present before God. So something Jesus did in the Gethsemane on Calvary was like time and space was like bent all around him, and he could you know, come into contact with each of us in his mortal form so that you and I could get a little bit of his presence that we can actually handle. That's what I'm saying. And I know that sounds weird, but I can't think of it being any other way than that. And the reason why I think that matters is because, well, I'll explain maybe in another video.